McDavid, Reinhart. Line 2, Hagel, McKinnon, Marner. Line 3.
Oh, Hagel that high, eh? Okay.
I got to tell you. But when I get through the rest of the guys, too, like you tell me where, how he's going to get bumped down. But I will say this. Hagel, to me, has become one of my favorite players to watch in all of hockey. Like, I just think that he is the epitome of a guy that you put on Team Canada that can play up and down your lineup in a variety of different roles and bring a style of play that, to me, feels like the return of Canadian hockey. Because, like, we've only had junior tournaments the last, what? How long has it been since the Olympics? 2014? Decade? Ugh,
yes.
Dark to say. When I see a lot of these junior hockey tournaments, you know what I think is that we've lost some of what makes Canada hockey. And I think that part of what is going to happen at this Four Nations and the following Olympics is the return of what actually makes us different culturally with this sport. And to me, Hagel actually fits some of that mold while also having the skill. And I think that he could play there. Again, you bring talent so that you can move things around, but this would just be the day one things. Line 3, Marchand, Crosby, Konechny. Line 4, this is my favorite line. I call them the care line. Stone, Scheifele, Wilson. So you got some size, you got some meanness, some real competitiveness, just a hell of a checking line. Then my extra forward for Hagee. Thoughts on the forward group? Who you cannot have there?
You're missing Anthony Cirelli.
So I thought so too, but it was between him and Scheifele, and I didn't know what to do with that.
I love the season Scheifele's having.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he's hurting right now. He's a little banged up.
Mm-hmm.
I think he deserves to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Verhaeghe, he's such a big game player, but I just don't know. So we talked to John Cooper on the weekend about Team Canada,
mm-hmm.
and the way he talked about Cirelli and Hagel
mm-hmm.
seemed to me that they're probably on the team.
Yeah, I like him.
Cirelli's such a good two-way guy. He'll kill penalties. You could sick him on Matthews or Eichel, or
mm-hmm.
He'll take on the hard matchups. He's won cups. I don't know, and the fact that the coach knows him, and Doug Armstrong and Don Sweeney have said that John Cooper, his voice really matters in terms of roster selection. It's not just, here, we pick the team, you coach the guys we want you to coach. Cooper's very involved. And the way he was talking about Cirelli, I think he's going to be on this team.
Yeah, I can't even push back on it, too, because one of my thoughts watching the Leafs game Saturday night was, well, don't you just have your PK1 right there with Hagel and Cirelli? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, don't you just have them? Like, don't you go with some of the duos and just say, like, hey, here's two of the guys? I don't know.
It looks like they're going with a couple duos on the back end, too.
Yeah.
Just because that's the other thing. Cooper stressed this is a short tournament. Like,
mm-hmm.
if Canada goes to the gold medal game, there's 4 games
mm-hmm.
total. So it's such a quick turnaround and there's not going to be like a whole bunch of practice time, that I think they're going to try and bank on some built-in chemistry.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's a fair one. It's a fair one. Like I said, this is just this is the original mock out, and I wanted to talk it out with you, and I think that you're presenting a really good case. And the reason why I had Verhaeghe as the extra guy over him is just because I did feel like, hey, don't you want to have somebody else who you feel like is a big goal scorer in the mix? Yeah. Don't you want to feel like there's someone else around if one of these line combinations doesn't work out, that you can just kind of put him in there? Or you just even do have the Panthers line where it's like you put him on the wing next to, like he's there, Reinhardt's there. You put like a McDavid in the middle and you just see how the chips fall.
Yeah, he's a big game player.
Mm-hmm.
I think they want a little bit more defensive element to their forwards because they're worried about the goalies. So I love having Mark Stone on my fourth line. He's such a good two-way player. Yeah. That's why maybe we would pick Cirelli over Verhaeghe.
Yeah, Cirelli with Stone would be great. I just loved the idea of having Scheifele and Wilson getting into the faces of other players on that line, and knowing Stone has some of that edge to his game too. Seeing those three on a line, it would warm my heart. It really would. Like, it would just make me feel good inside, seeing them get in the corners, seeing them in scrums in front of the net, and just feeling like you've got the baddest group, right? Like somebody that's getting in the face of the Kachucks, and you say, yeah, I feel good about where Canada stands. That to me is great. Like, Team Canada 2014 had such a good intimidation factor. It was on the blue line, but it really was there, Like, you had Shea Weber, you had Drew Doughty, you had just like a real team with real size. And I don't think that the blue line is the same this time around, which I'll get into now. Okay, so Taves, Makar, like, we're doing that, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, and Theodore Petrangelo, I think too.
Yep. So that's my next one. Then it gets probably a little bit more controversial for me because I'm going Morrissey Tanev and then Uyghur as the extra guy.
Oh,
yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, I know people will say homer pick, but every single inclination in my bones tells me that you would never feel bad about having a Morrissey Tanev pairing on the ice. And that Chris Tanev, again, you're talking about that Cirelli argument, then I would make the same one for Chris Tanev.
I'm not going to go against you. I love this guy's game. And you also have to realize, like some of the names like Bouchard being thrown out there.
Absolutely not.
Like, you only got only one guy can run PP1.
Yep.
And it's going to be Makar.
Yep.
Right? So you need someone to be on the penalty kill. And Tanev's such a heart and soul guy, like blocks every shot. Every teammate who's ever played with him raves about this guy. So I think you want guys like that. I think it would be a fantastic choice. I'm not convinced it's going to happen, but I'm not going to argue with your choice. I think he'd be a fantastic addition on third pair.
Last is the goalies, and who cares? Because it's the same ones that basically everybody. I don't really care who has. Like, if someone's like, "Oh, I have Cam Talbot as my third guy," I'm like, whatever. It's Binnington, and if he can't play well, you're screwed. Like, it's pretty much it. It's Binnington, it's Hill, and it's Thompson.
Yeah, I like Thompson on merit. The good conversation to have, and because again, we're talking about 4 games maximum, and like if you're down to your third goalie, you're probably not making that fourth game.
No,
is Marc-Andre Fleury just for vibes?
Yeah,
and keep Sid happy.
Keep Sid happy.
Be the guy that hangs out and practice. Like, you take a million extra shots in practice. Like, you're probably not even playing, right, or even dressing. So if it's him, I'm not going to cause a stink. But I love the Logan Thompson story. Undrafted guy.
Yeah.
Goes out and he says, I'm not going to be the man. So I had a good talk with him a couple weeks ago, and he goes into Kelly McCrimmon's office and basically says, "Oh, Aiden Hill's your guy? Well, I'm a number one. So if I'm not the number one here, trade me."
God, I love that.
I love that attitude.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah. That's exactly what you want to hear from a guy. I saw, I think somebody tweeted out that it should just be Kelly McCrimmon that makes the decision on the goaltenders, right? And it's like, hey, he's had them all, right? Like, all these guys, they've been with him at some point, all the bubble dudes. But I thought, I don't know, because maybe he made the wrong choice with his own team. So maybe it wouldn't be that guy because of what's happened so far this year. Yeah, I think that it's pretty clear that whatever comes out of this, there's got to be, I think there's going to be conversations about hockey in Canada in general, just with like the declining rate, especially of young men playing the sport. How expensive the sport has become, how homogenous, how professionalized. Like, there's a lot of problems that I just don't know how they fix, especially at the youth level. But the goaltending stuff, I think, is going to come into pretty sharp focus if it ends up being the thing that does cost Canada, and we're heading into an Olympic cycle. Anyways, that's my Team Canada.
The goalie summit.
Yeah, goalie summit, fine. Just have it. Let's do it. Let's figure it out. Because, if we're trying to beg for Joey Decord to get a passport, it's not great. This can't be the way. This just cannot be the way. Okay, so, yes, I'll stick with goaltending to start with you first. So, sticking with goaltending. Wolves won 5 straight. He looks like the not having a training camp mattered, right? The way that he looked at the beginning of the season versus what he looks like now. They've got all these games coming up, so this really isn't that big of a story, in my opinion, because these guys, they're going to make them share the net. I think they always wanted Wool to be the number one, which is kind of fine. But yeah, do you see anything, or is there any sense from you that they would lean on him a little bit more, and that there would be starting to be a bit of a separation between who is the one and who is the two, even with the way that Stolarz has played, which has been phenomenal, and I would argue could be the story of the season up until this point?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because like you mentioned, that the way their schedule is, they really are going to lean on both guys, and they've gone out of their way to try and tamp down any conversation or potential controversy of this guy's our number one and this guy's the backup. They've just kind of stuck with the party line of, we got 2 guys, they're both going to play more than they've ever played, we need them both. And it's not a lie, but internally, for sure, you want the younger guy, you want the guy that you drafted and developed and have poured all these resources in and gave him a raise before he really earned it. I mean, phenomenal goalie, but just didn't have the resume, didn't have the games played, didn't have the track record of staying healthy when you gave him $15 million or whatever. You internally, it makes sense. You want that guy to be the guy, but he's still got to do it. And one of the biggest things I've noticed is, you know, of course he missed the start of the game because of the groin tightness or whatever. But it was more just how he was. He was feeling the pressure because, you know, when you talk to him, his answers were a little bit more clipped. He wasn't as chatty, and now it's like you're talking to a different person. He's joking around. He's having casual conversations. He's way more relaxed, and that's just he's confident, and he's confident because he's won a bunch. He loves the defense he's playing in front of. That's the other thing. Both goalies look good in part. Like they're both positionally sound, good, big goalies, but in part why they're playing so well is Berube's structure and the fact they went out and got two more real defensemen, like we were talking about Tanev. Wool just raves about how much this team is willing to block shots. And if you look at the Leafs shot blocks, they're climbing up the charts. They blocked way more than per 60 or whatever than they did last year. So the goalies are loving playing behind Berube's system and this blue line. And just Wool, I think mentally is in a much better spot. He's feeling it right now. And the only thing I would caution is because, and it's partly just the schedule. It was such a long break between games there. Is I wonder if Anthony Stolarz needs to keep going in a rhythm. He looked a little not quite dialed in to start that Florida game, and maybe it's being back in that building. I don't know, but it took him a while to find his groove in that Panthers game, and I don't know if you can wait and sit either guy too long. Like I think it just makes sense to try and balance it out right now.
Yeah, I'm with you.
The Leafs center dilemma: who can strengthen the roster? If you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan like me, you know the team's center depth has been a constant concern this season. With Austin Matthews set to return from a mysterious upper body injury next week, the excitement of having our star back is palpable. However, there are still serious issues to address in the center position to keep the team competitive and, of course, fuel our playoff dreams. David Kampf, a key piece in the center rotation, is sidelined with a lower body injury. As if that weren't enough, Kaye Jarnkrok is still recovering from surgery, leaving another gap in the lineup. Max Domi, expected to be a versatile asset, has been placed on injured reserve, further aggravating the situation after missing consecutive practices due to lingering pains. To sum it up, the Leafs are missing 4 functional centers, and the pressure to act is mounting. James Myrtle, a respected Leafs analyst and contributor to The Athletic, highlighted a series of potential trade targets to address this dilemma during his appearance on the Bunkis podcast. Among the names mentioned, 2 stood out: Nick Jugstad and, for the nostalgic fans, a possible reunion with Ryan O'Reilly. Jugstad seems to be Myrtle's favorite, and for good reason. The player, who signed a 2-year deal with the Utah Hockey Club last offseason, carries a manageable $2.1 million cap hit, which is essential for a team as salary cap-strapped as the Leafs. Additionally, standing at 6 feet 6 inches and weighing 205 pounds, he would bring not only physicality but also consistent offensive contributions. Jugstad is the most viable option for the Leafs right now, Myrtle stated on the podcast. And he's right. Experienced and versatile, Jugstad has played for several teams, including the Florida Panthers, Pittsburgh Penguins, Minnesota Wild, and Edmonton Oilers, and could quickly adapt to the Leafs' dynamic. With an affordable contract and a solid track record, he offers a practical solution without sacrificing too many future assets. However, it's impossible to ignore the possibility of a Ryan O'Reilly return. Yes, we know he chose the Nashville Predators last summer in search of a quieter environment, but the Leafs management still holds him in high regard. The 2019 Stanley Cup-winning captain with the St. Louis Blues is precisely the type of player any contender would love to have on their roster. However, the cost of bringing him back would be steep, both in terms of trade assets and cap space adjustments, as Nashville or a third team would need to retain part of his salary. I don't think the O'Reilly scenario is entirely out of reach, Myrtle said, showing that there's optimism within the organization. However, there are doubts about how much it's worth investing in a 33-year-old player, even with his impeccable credentials. Meanwhile, cheaper internal options like Steven Lawrence, Connor Dewar, Pontus Holmberg, and Fraser Minton have been mentioned. But let's be honest, these names might serve as short-term stopgaps, but they're far from offering the stability and impact the team needs. The pressure is all on GM Brad Treliving. He knows that despite the Leafs' solid performance so far, the center position is crucial to sustaining any championship aspirations. With the trade deadline approaching, Treliving has likely intensified his efforts to finalize a deal. And we, the fans, are eagerly awaiting good news. For now, all we can do is trust that the team can weather this tough phase and hope a solution, whether it's Bjugstad, O'Reilly, or another name, arrives before things spiral out of control. After all, as we all know, the Leafs don't have the luxury of wasting another season with a promising but incomplete roster. The time to act is now. The Leafs center dilemma, expanding on the potential solutions. The Toronto Maple Leafs, amidst another promising